Hello, this is Stephen, and yes, we are back with another Harry Potter movie review. And today, we'll be reviewing 2010's Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. Now, this was big. We had finally, by the time this film came out, we had finally reached the end of the series. Now, Deathly Hallows was the final Harry Potter book, but the creators decided to essentially split that book. Instead, there'd be Part 1, which we'll be reviewing, which will be this review, and then Part 2. So it was kind of like that. David Yates once again returned back to direct, and here the anticipation, well, was really here. Like, we were here at, like, the final moment, and it was a surprise to have the final installment be a two-parter. Something that the Hunger Games would do later down the line. With the cast returning, this was essentially set up the big finale, which, if I recall correctly, was either released the following year, or either the following year or a few months after. I'm not so entirely sure, but you know, this was really big. So the question is, how do I feel about Deathly Hallows? Well, without further ado, like we always need to, let's hop into the cast. Of course, here the cast is back. The trio, of course, Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, and Hermione Granger, portrayed by Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson, respectively. This here also has the return of Dobby the House Elf, a character we hadn't really seen since the second film. Now, the character plays a bit more of a prominent role in the books, but again, just as they were doing the films, the books were not all the books were fully released, so it's a bit of a surprise to have him return, but I loved it nonetheless. There was also here the character of Griphook, a goblin who is an employer at Gringotts, the Wizarding Bank, portrayed by Warwick Davis, who of course plays that Professor Phineas, who is of course that goblin wizard at Hogwarts we've seen in previous films. So it's great to have him back. Other notable favorites are back include, of course, Fleur Delacour, a character we hadn't seen since the fourth installment. And she's back and is actually engaged and marries a character named Bill Weasley, one of the Weasley brothers. Now, we've seen all the brothers in the series except for one, Charlie, but Charlie's been mentioned, and I was a real shame that he never appeared. Now, Bill Weasley is portrayed by Donald Gleeson, and Fleur Delacour is portrayed by Clemence Posse. I'm probably butchering those names, and God, do not sue me. Nymphadora Tonks is also back. We also have Remus Lupin, Shacklebolt, Fred and George are back. Hagrid is back, still portrayed by Colby Rolltrain. Mad-Eye Moody is back. Molly and Arthur Weasley are back. Ginny is back. And of course Luna is back. And here we get introduced to Luna's father, who is very just as bizarre, strange as, well, Luna, but a very nice guy. Neville is back, and here we're introduced to our new Minister of Magic. As we've been keeping up in the previous films, the previous Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge, was kicked out of office. And as a result, a new Minister of Magic took over. The character is sorry, is portrayed by Bill. Sorry, I've got a headache, ladies and gentlemen. I truly apologize. Let's just look at my notes very quick. Probably butchering like I do everything. The character's name is Rufus Scringer, portrayed by Bill Nighy. He's the new Minister of Magic. Now, in the book, he was actually an Auror before he took over. He actually played a bit of a role in the second book. That was trying to entice Harry and the gang to work with the Ministry in order to take down Voldemort. But Harry didn't, seeing that they were far too corrupt, especially after it did with Dolores Umbridge, who, by the way, is back in this film as a minor role. Of course, Other characters include the return of course, some of the series' best villains. We've got the Malfoys. Narcissa, Lucius, Draco are back. Voldemort is back, still portrayed by Ralph Fiennes. We have, of course, Bellatrix Lestrange, who, of course, in the last film was revealed to be Narcissa's sister. We have Sirius Snape and Wormtail. And, of course, we have a few, other villains that works, with Voldemort, such as, for the series, such as, Pylus, who is a sort of puppet and working in the the Death Eater high ranks. We also here have Corbin, another high-ranking member. They're more minor roles, but they do play some bit of a role. We also have Ollivanders back, still portrayed by John Hurt. Great as always, again Frederick Greyback, and accompanied by Scab, who is kind of like a leader of a group called Snatchers, and they play a little bit of a role in the story. They're like a minor sub-faction that works with Death Eaters. And then, of course, we have really the series' first introduction to Grindelwald, who will become big prominent characters in the Fantastic Beasts series, which, of course, I do plan to review, after we've wrapped up the end of the Harry Potter films. But with the cast out of the way, or should I say characters out of the way, let's get into this review. We begin this film on an almost very dark and somber note. Here we see, the gang getting kind of ready for the big thing. We see Hermione actually erase her parents' memory as they go on this journey that they're going to do to take down Voldemort. Ron is at the burrow looking into the sky, and Harry is overseeing his family, well, if you would call them that, the Dursleys are preparing to leave and, go into sort of hiding. Now, we hadn't really seen the Dursleys, this is their final scene. Now, this is one scene that is deleted, but I really wish they kept in. It's really how he says goodbye, especially to Petunia, how he's saying, how they have to go into hiding. She doesn't want to leave her home. But he does say she did this one line. Again, we remember in the first film that she kind of, was jealous towards her sister. But there's this one line I wish was kept in, where he turns to Harry and says, "You may have lost your mother that night, but I lost a sister." Showing that somewhere deep down, Petunia does still care about her sister. We also then see how, he says goodbye to Vernon and Dudley. Now, Vernon, there's not really much somber there, but there is between Dudley, how he says, after, Harry basically says to Vernon, "Don't worry, I'm just another waste of space," Dudley comes up and says, "I don't think you're a waste of space," and they have this nice little exchange before they leave. It's small detail, but I somehow wish it got incorporated into the film, or somehow was in the film. It would have been nice so we can actually say goodbye to these guys. The Dursleys were characters we hated, but they were meant to be hated, and it would have been nice to have a bow out for these characters, but also shown how, especially judging by Petunia and Dudley, how they've slightly evolved. So it would have been nice. Anyway, once we wrap that up, we then go to the Malfoy Manor. A location that we would visit yet again in this film, and I think the next one, and it's the first time we are seeing it. It turns out that the mansion has now become the headquarters for Voldemort and his Death Eaters. Here, the next person to arrive is Snape. Snape comes up and and Voldemort, asks him to sit and has a seat ready for him, showing how Snape is now one of Voldemort's most trusted followers. It also should be noted that we actually get to see Lucius, as if I recall correctly, the sixth film told us that Lucius got locked up in Azkaban. Now, according to, if you do know some of the books, Voldemort caused a second mass escape, releasing many of the Death Eaters, and essentially recruiting new people to his cause. Now, Lucius looks dreadful. He looks absolutely on death's door. He looks horrible, showing that his time in Azkaban really affected him. Also, the way he's acting here, Lucius is nothing like he was in previous film. He's almost like a disgrace to the entire Death Eater ranks. Jason Isaac, how he could switch from playing how he was in previous films to almost being this disheveled man is truly outstanding. Also, how Draco is here is he's a disheveled, he's this kid like scared out of his mind and is a part of like this society. It's truly just showing that what Draco has really become. He is nothing like we remember, and I really appreciate that so much. After essentially they're doing a discussion on where Harry is and, a plan to attack Harry and the Order, we find out that, that they plan to move Harry as he's no longer under protection of the love spell that his mother did in the very beginning of the series that we've told, but also they know not to trust the Ministry because they know that the Death Eater, they have infiltrated the Ministry, then it's not safe. I love how one Death Eater says, well, they got that right. They asked, Voldemort then turns and asks Pylus, a top-ranking member within the Death Eater organization, but also at the same time, he is also a politician within the Ministry, a very high-ranking one. When he asks, he says, "One hears many things, my lord, but whether the truth is among them, it all remains unclear." Voldemort basically turns and says, "That's spoken like a true politician. You'll be most useful, I'm sure." Now, I did some research and find out in the book, he was never willingly a follower of Voldemort. He was more under the Imperius curse. I like the change here because, honestly, it doesn't make or break things. I find the change to be something that worked. And honestly makes sense. Voldemort, because of his ever-growing power, politicians would team up with him, for their own gain. But it's also clear, that they know their place. So I kind of like that. Here, we also, Voldemort laid down, something to his followers with the fact that, how he has a complication, with his wand. How it can't harm Harry because he and Harry's wands are actually twins. They can wound but never harm one another. So in order to really take him down, he needs to have another one's wand. And so he goes to his Death Eaters to ask who would give up their wand, as in his words, who would like the honor. He then turns to Lucius and basically forcibly takes his wand from him. And it's just a very powerful scene showing how, Voldemort is really in for himself and just rules this whole place with fear and nothing more. He then turns and brings forth a victim, a teacher from Hogwarts who's actually teaching Muggle studies. And her ideals go very much against, what these guys are, with, Muggle-borns and half-bloods, all that. So it's a pretty dark and almost unnerving scene, as I feel every time I go and watch it. And basically, she is begging Snape to save her. But Voldemort just kills her right in front of everyone. And out of everyone to be really more affected by this, it is Draco. Again, I love how Tom Felton, is portraying Draco here. Again, just like his father, they're nothing like they were the cocky, arrogant guys from earlier in the film series. Here, they are completely, in almost terror of this guy. And I feel that they absolutely own it. Voldemort then brings forth his Snake Nagini. This is the first time we're meeting the great, Snake Nagini, and basically tells the snake to go and basically dig in, and she begins to essentially eat the professor. It is really dark, but it also, just shows that, that the stakes are being raised and what our team will be going up against. It is truly great stuff. The next scene we see is, Harry just wandering around the old, his old house. And he stares at the, that closet that he used to live in from the very beginning of the very first film. I love the callback here, where things really changed for him, and I absolutely, love that little callback. He then goes to his door, where he sees Hagrid, Ron, Hermione, and basically most of the Order. They all come in, and after they've done a sweep around the place, we get a little bit of character development from, Remus and Tonks, as they were kind of about to slightly drop that that Tonks was pregnant. They all quickly make their way in, and here we also, for the first time, get introduced properly to Bill Weasley, Ron's older brother, sort of the cool one. We also find out that, he's actually engaged to marry Fleur Delacour. Again, a character from the 4th film. She was one of the competitors in the Triwizard Tournament. She's here. We also get a little bit of character from Bill, how he's saying how he had a run-in with Frederick Greyback, which caused these scars across his face. And he says he one day wants to return the favor. This was something that would have been shown in the 6th film if they did adapt it, but for some reason they didn't. I also want to point out as we go forward, so far we've met all the Weasleys except for one. Charlie Weasley, yet he's been name-dropped twice in the series. Why he never appeared is beyond me, and it feels like a complete slap in the face that we've never got to see him. It just doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, with that out of the way, they go to Harry and tell his plan. Mad-Eye Moody tells his plan to, quickly get Harry out of here. Now, Mad-Eye Moody reveals to Harry that has something called the Trace on him, because he's underage. Which means, that where he goes and that the Ministry can follow. And this especially is worrying because they know that Voldemort's followers have infiltrated the Ministry. And in order to, get away and get him out safely, they essentially, they plan to divide everyone into groups of 2. Harry still is not following. And then he gets out, Mad-Eye Moody gets out his trademark flask and says, I believe you're familiar with this particular brew. And basically, it's Polyjuice Potion, something we haven't seen really since the 2nd and 4th film in the series. So Polyjuice Potion makes its return. And I like how just as he's really distracting Harry with this conversation, Hermione's secretly sneaking up. And as soon as Harry realizes Polyjuice Potion, says no, absolutely not. Harry wants to do this on his own. He doesn't want anyone else to, join up with him. Or sacrifice himself for him. But, like he's gonna, talk his way out of it, Hermione ends up pulling a bit of hair off Harry, putting in the potion that Mad-Eye Moody already made, and several of the people come forward to drink it. Fred and George, Ron, Hermione, Fleur, Tonks, and of course, Nuggus Fletcher, Mungungus, who is, from what I managed to find out, he was a member of the Order from both the original Order and the current one, but he's more of a con man, a kind of wizard con man thief type character. So with that, and he's just really a minor character, he does play a little bit of a role in the next film and later on in the film, but he's really just a minor character. And I just love the transition here, seeing how everyone turns into Harry. The special effects are top notch, and honestly, it's an effect that really holds up really well today. Anyway, just as everyone begins to change into Harry and basically all start, put on the same clothing so they could really fool everyone as they get paired up in 2, the real Harry is asked to go with Hagrid. Hagrid says he was the one who brought him here when he was just a little baby, so he feels he, out of everyone, should be the right to take him away. Anyway, everyone quickly gets on either their broom, thestrals, or in Harry and Hagrid's case, the magical motorbike, and all fly off to the burrow, and say, everyone, we'll meet you there. As they fly up into the sky, and through the clouds, they end up getting to an ambush with a whole bunch of Death Eaters. It's a really fast and heart-wrenching scene, especially as, as everyone's trying to dodge, the spells. Voldemort suddenly makes his appearance. And, unfortunately, we do get someone beloved gets killed in this fight. Hedwig, Harry's beloved owl. It is truly a heart-wrenching scene, as this is a beloved character. Well, a beloved character that we have seen in previous films. So it was heart-wrenching to see Hedwig get killed. However, Harry does manage to defeat Voldemort and destroy Voldemort's wand, or should I say Lucius's wand, and it resulting in saving saving his life. They end up crashing somewhere near the burrow, where they then run into Molly and Ginny. Hagrid reveals how it was an ambush, and they don't know if everyone made it back. And judging by the sounds of it, very few people did. Eventually Lupin and I think it's George Weasley or Fred or one of the twins makes it back, though it gets an injured ear. The first thing Lupin does is grab Harry and tries to have him basically confirm if it is really him. And Harry does full confirm, leaving Lupin to suspect that, someone sold him out. Then comes Shacklebolt and Hermione. And Lupin and Shacklebolt, thinking the same thing, hold their wand and try to have, confirmation proof that it is, really them. After that, they then lowered their wand. Next thing you know, Fleur Delacour and Bill make it, along with Tonks and Ron. Hermione gives Ron a big hug after Tonks says how Ron was brave, pretty much saved his life, he wouldn't have made it without him. I love how Hermione's like, really? Ron goes, why are you so surprised? It's a fun little moment. Again, further shipping these two to hopefully become a thing. I'm still crossing my fingers, ladies and gentlemen. Eventually, we do get Arthur Weasley and the other twin to come. Fred, and the first thing they do, as soon as they hear that George is injured, the first thing they do is run to see if he's alright. And as Fred is seeing George lying there, George, in his only way possible, says, I'm holy now, Fred. Get it? Pointing to how he has no ear but a hole. And the first thing Fred says is, seriously, out of all the ear-related humor, and you go with, I'm holy. I'm sorry, but even though it's meant to be really a dark, really sad scene with, a beloved character getting injured like that, it still feels, I love how, they put this thing in to not only be optimistic, but showing just because he's injured, the real, what he's known for, didn't get that affected. I absolutely love that. But just as everything's getting all, somber, Bill Weasley comes up and said, Mad Eye is dead. He did not make it. And this was another sad thing, because I loved Mad Eye. Especially, his roles in the 4th and 5th film. So it was a real shame to have this happen, but I do like how we do get some deaths here, as it's upping the stakes more than ever, with what's going on and what our characters are about to experience going forward. I really love that they went with this, and honestly, it was just, it really felt like natural, that, this is really build up. This opening to the film, what I've always appreciated about it, the kid elements are gone now, ladies and gentlemen. Just as the other films were kind of phasing that out, this is really more for adults. Anyway, after what Harry has seen with the sacrifices everyone's going to make for him, he can't live with that, so he plans to do this on his own. So at night, he plans to sneak away, but Ron essentially pulls him up and tells him no. You can't do this on your own. You wouldn't survive on your own out there, not with me, and certainly not with Hermione. Don't tell her I ever said that. Don't worry, I won't. I love that little moment there, showing that Ron is developing feelings for Hermione, just as clearly Hermione is developing feelings for Ron. Anyway, I love that scene, though, that it shows Harry's character, as he's the person, who doesn't want anyone to die for him. He's seen enough of it already. Again, he's a kid taking on arguably a man's job. But, he does accept, that it has to, but he does accept, he can't do everything on his own. After that, we are in the morning, just as everyone's getting prepared for a wedding. We get the scene between Ginny and Harry. Again, I've said in the previous film, I'm not a huge fan of the pairing. In fact, I find them awkward. But here, it's kind of becoming more tolerable. And it is a nice moment, I'll grant it that. But, I don't know, with the bad taste I had with the previous film, I don't know. It just feels too lovey-dovey. But it also is nice. A nice moment. And what makes it especially better is when George comes in with the bandage around his ear and has a nice funny moment as he is watching this, takes a sip, then notice that he's there, and the first thing he says is, morning. You can always count on the Weasley twins to always, even in the serious of moments and the direst of times, to find some comedy, to uplift everything. And I love the little look George gave Harry, when Ginny leaves. It's a fun moment. I'm sorry, but how could anyone hate the Weasley twins? Just as that's happening, as they are preparing, preparing the wedding, the Minister of Magic suddenly makes his appearance. He made an appearance earlier in the film with giving a press conference how, these are dire times, and he's trying to keep things together, but everyone knows that they've kind of already at least the Ministry has lost. The only left is the Order and Harry. The Minister comes over and, you know, is basically there for Dumbledore's will. He's left everything to everyone. He's left us some wizard books, some like wizard children books to Hermione Granger. He leaves his Deluminator, a device we saw in the very first film and never really saw back since. He gives that to Ron, saying in the darkest of times, may the light show him the way. And then, of course, Harry, he gives him the snitch, and not just any snitch, the one he caught way back in the first film. But he also gives Harry a second request, Godric Gryffindor's sword. However, he can't give it to him, mostly on two grounds. One, it's a historical property and not Dumbledore's to give away. Though granted, he does say it does show itself to any worthy Gryffindor. Lines that will become apparent in not just in the last film, but we'll get to that when we get to that film. And the second reason he can't give it, well, it's gone. It's missing. Something's happened to it, and no one knows really where it is. But like just as the Minister begins to leave, he basically turns and says, you can't do this all on your own. I like how that line has to get in Harry's head that, granted, he's got a mission, but no one man, or in this case, no one child, can do it alone. Even the best are gonna need help. So I kind of like that line. We then cut to the wedding. Even though it's a short scene, it's nice and beautiful. I like how Harry just wanders around. And then he runs into Luna, who is of course, who doesn't love Luna? A nice little exchange. We also get to meet Luna's father, just as quirky as his daughter. And it's revealed that they live, you know, a hill not far away from the Burrow. And basically, even though he's kind of creeping Harry out a little bit, he does come up and basically say, you know, how they, you know, believe Harry, and they're using their newspaper to essentially, you know, dethrone Voldemort and all that. Luna then says, come on, Dad. Harry wants to be left alone right now. He's just too polite to say so. I love that. Eventually, Harry then makes his way over to an old man who is revealed to be an old acquaintance and even friend of Dumbledore, as the two were very close, almost friend-like. As soon as he sees Harry, like everyone else in this film series, the first thing they do is say, oh, Mr. Potter, please sit down, showing, you know, that despite everything, Harry has this reputation built for him. But at the same time, you know, it's just, you know, he's very humble about it. He basically says how he read, found what he wrote in the Daily Prophet about Dumbledore's memoirs to be really moving and inspiring, and basically wants to know a bit more about him. We reveal a few, and this, what I like about this film, we get to reveal a bit more about Dumbledore, but granted they'll be further expanded upon Fantastic Beasts. Again, I do plan to review those films later when I get the chance to. It's eventually revealed that Dumbledore actually had a brother, Aberforth. Eventually, an old lady basically goes and tells there was the scandal about what happened to the, you know, Dumbledore family, where some Muggle boys actually assaulted Dumbledore's sister. And eventually, the father eventually went and killed these Muggle boys, and he ended up in Azkaban. And eventually, they would find more information with a woman named Philta Bagshot, and she's one of the most celebrated witch historians, and was someone very close to the Dumbledore family. They moved to a place in, I think it's Godric's Hollow, where ironically we later find out, would be the same place where unfortunately Harry's parents sadly met their demise. I like how we're revealing that, you know, I guess we're kind of getting accustomed to Dumbledore wasn't always so squeaky clean. And this was especially proven in Half-Blood Prince, when he was drinking like that poison and basically he was shouting in pain and revealing a bit about his past. It was something really worthwhile. So this is really revealing more of that. Anyway, the wedding is going on until suddenly a flash of blue suddenly appears, telling everyone that the minister is dead, the ministry has fallen. and they are coming. Soon, the party is crashed by Death Eaters. Many disapparate to get away, but a wizard fight breaks out between Death Eaters and Order members. Ron, Harry, and Hermione make their way to each other. However, Harry does try to save Ginny, but Lupin says, go, get out of here, or we'll take care of this. The two manage to separate into London. Just in the nick of time, almost getting hit by a bus. They begin to wander the streets, realizing they need to get further, into hiding. They turn to a nearby alley, and Hermione realized, basically showed her contingency, as there's a bag full of clothes, and not to their surprise, books. But it's one of those, I guess jinx bags, I guess I would call it that, not entirely sure. But basically it's one of those tricks where you can put your hand all the way down, in the bag, and it's implying that the bag is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Hey, I just made a Doctor Who reference. Anyway, they soon get changed and make their way to a local cafe, where I like how this is Ron's probably first time in the Muggle world, and he is pretty much a stranger here. Ron and Hermione and Harry are pretty much well known in this place. And I like how he doesn't understand the concept of, what a, cappuccino is and all that. And just as they ask for that, they are basically in hide, trying to lay low and try and figure out their next move. Once that happens, two repairmen end up walking in, and Harry is tipped off that they are clearly Death Eaters, and then one fight breaks out. They end up knocking out the two, and as the lady comes back in, she's told, to run. Ron uses the Deluminator to turn off all the lights, and Hermione ends up closing, locking up the store. They notice two of them. One of them is a thug that was known in the wanted posters, and one was on the astronomy tower the night Dumbledore died. Realizing that they can't kill him because then they don't want to be as worse as they are, so they decided to alter their memory with the courtesy of Hermione. Ron basically gives Hermione encouragement, as she's a little befuddled about it, but says, come on, you're the best, best at it, and does, give her some, comfort her a little bit. The two then wander, eventually making their way, back to the Order's first headquarters, Sirius Black's old home. There's this little trap, which was mostly to scare away anyone, I'm guessing mostly Snape, as they make their way there through the place, mostly because, again, they're going here to lay low. They notice a door, RB, that little locket from the first film. It turns out that this RB is Remus Black, Black's brother. So it turns out, as I later find out, Black actually had a brother who was part of Voldemort's ranks, but later grew disillusioned with him and tried to, get rid of, tried to destroy the Horcrux. Only he couldn't. Even his loyal servant, that little, house elf from the fifth one, who was also here, couldn't destroy it as a final, act from his master to do so. In fact, it was kind of one of his biggest failures. We get a bit of more of Harry having the classic nightmares, something that was prevalent in the fifth film, with, his connection to Voldemort. As we see Voldemort really torturing Ollivander about a wand. And, a wand and trying to get some information. I love how they're basically laying low and trying to figure out how to, to destroy the locket. Again, they find out the locket they had, from 6 is actually a fake, and they find the real one here. Well, they try to find the real one, as, Remus, as this, house elf had it, however, lost it as someone came in and started stealing things from in here. And basically, he was told to go and find the man who took it. But whilst this is happening, we then get a scene of basically Death Eaters taking over the Ministry, such as their new policies against Muggle-borns being prosecuted, Death Eaters on the Hogwarts Express trying to round up, essentially Muggle-borns and even blood traders. I love the scene as they get on, they're trying to find Harry, but the first thing Neville does is stand up to them and say, "Oi, losers, they're not here." I love this because we didn't get really see much of Neville in the previous film, but this one little scene for me really makes up for that, as it shows that, Neville has really evolved from being the lovable, loser that got pushed around to really here being a more confident and, imposing individual. We also here see that Dolores Umbridge is back, and is a high-ranking member within the Ministry. We already knew she's evil, and for those who don't know why she was never locked up, well, after she was outed, the Ministry thought, you know, she was less important. After all, Voldemort was on the loose, but because they failed to really prosecute her, or, you know, really have her be held accountable for her crimes, this essentially affected them in the long run, as this made Harry not want to team up with the Ministry, seeing them as fully corrupt. As a result of that, we then see what are known as snatchers go around essentially, you know, essentially as, you know, I would like to call them like wizard FBI guys, you know, or the fugitive squad, running down those that are kind of on the run. We then see Mungungus, you know, hiding in the streets, knowing how there are snatchers everywhere, and he quickly runs. We then go back to, you know, the place where Harry, Ron, and Hermione are laying low. We get a nice little scene between Ron and Hermione, with Hermione trying to teach Ron how to play the piano, only to notice a noise, and they see Mungungus getting, you know, being brought in, not only by the house elf that was, you know, loyal to the Black family, but also Dobby. Dobby makes his big return, and it's so great as ever to have him back. They take Mungungus as one, and basically try to interrogate him. It turns out Mungungus, you know, quickly went on the run after, you know, Mad Eye died, as everyone would blame him for Mad Eye's death. Now, there's something I need to point out. Now, it makes sense for Dobby to greet himself to Harry. But why would he greet Ron? The two never met, at least in the films. Books, it'd be different, but they act like they've met before. It would have made sense for if maybe Harry, you know, introduced Hermione and Ron to Dobby and says this was the house elf he had a problem with in his second year, which would have been nice because it would have fit out with the film. Again, you could say there's stuff behind, like, that we don't see in the films that actually happened that could be canon, and I don't mind that theory, but I felt that this would have been far better. This always bugged me a little bit, but again, a little bit, not to the point of being angry. Anyway, Mungungus then reveals, you know, after that he came back here, obviously to get some things to lay low. Whilst he did, however, and got out, he was then rounded up by this Ministry lady who threatened to throw him in prison because he didn't have a license. But he noticed he had, you know, he had this locket, the real locket he stole, not the fake one that the gang has. And basically, you know, she said if she gave that to him, if he gave that to her, he'd be let off. They're like, her? Yeah, it was a woman. Could you describe her? Or, you know, her name? No? But then he notices an old newspaper on the floor, and reveals to the gang who it is. And to their shock, it is Dolores Umbridge. So they realize that they now have to break into the Ministry, go to Dolores, and get the locket back. What did they do? Well, they end up, you know, knocking out 3 Ministry employees, use Polyjuice Potion to disguise themselves as them, and then, you know, make their way in. It's a funny little scene, but it basically how they enter the Ministry. They notice, like, how it's changed, and how it's almost become a, you know, dictatorial state. We hear right into one of the, you know, the Death Eaters we saw at the beginning of the film, who is now a very high, you know, Ministry employee. Anyway, as they're making their way around, you know, to find, you know, Dolores, Harry ends up in this sort of department where, you know, to persecute Muggle-borns, where he also finds, after using a distraction, he makes into Dolores' office to find the locket, not there. He notices that Mad Eye's eye is on the door, showing, you know, that Mad Eye is dead, and she took this from her. Took this from him. It was truly awful. Anyway, they make their way to a familiar place where Harry had his, trial in the 5th film, and Dolores prosecuting a Muggle-born, you know, for not being a real witch. The gang pretty much manages to save her, just as their Polyjuice Potion was coming undone. And I like how Harry gets to use the line on her, "I must not tell lies." They quickly get the locker and make a run for it, because in the room they have Dementors. Yep, Dementors are back, and are clearly used within the place as a sort of, you know, muscle, for the Ministry, and especially proven now that they're on Voldemort's side. They managed to make their escape just in the nick of time, and pretty much quickly get out of there as quick as they can. However, the Ministry employee, who is actually a Death Eater, you know, we saw in the beginning of the film here, notices them, and basically almost calls the whole place on lockdown. The gang just managed to make an escape, you know, but they couldn't go back to Black's home because they knew where they were going. So they end up in the middle of the forest, and Ron gets badly injured. Hermione then puts up a protective spell so no one can see him, and they try to destroy the locket, but it's not working. In fact, nothing's working, and they don't know how to destroy it. We also find a side effect with being in touch with the Horcrux, as it changes a person's character and personality. Harry spends a lot of the film kind of looking in the this broken glass mirror, which he found, you know, at the Grimmauld place, you know, Black's home. And for this bit of the film, we do see them kind of on the run and in hiding. Harry also gets some visions of how Voldemort is now interrogating a new wand owner. As it turns out, he went into, and it turns out what Voldemort is trying to find is the Elder Wand, the most powerful wand in the wizarding world. It is powerful, it is deadly, and again, this wand owner came into possession of it, trying to duplicate it for business sake. However, it got stolen by a young wizard, who we would later find out, or Hermione will later find out, was actually a person named Grindelwald, a dark witch and wizard before Voldemort's time, and was famously taken down by Dumbledore. As they are further trying to find, stay on the but throughout the film, they're trying to stay very much below the radar. And whilst they are noticing unfortunate Muggle-borns being rounded up and killed on their way. However, the gang begins to fall apart because Ron is wearing the Horcrux around the neck. What's happening is the Horcrux is going from person to person. But it is affecting them, and it's affecting Ron the most. Ron was always, even though Ron's the loyalist, he's definitely the most insecure. And the Horcrux is manipulating him into believing that Harry and Hermione might actually be a thing. Eventually, this leads to a complete blow up later. But whilst that's going on, they're also listening to the radio, known as Potter Watch, where they find out, where people have died, people supporting what's going on in the world. What's going on. Hermione comes up with a theory about Godric Gryffindor's sword, why it was given to him, because it's possibly the thing that could be used to destroy a Horcrux. However, a scene that comes to mind is the big blow-up. The Horcrux has really affected Ron, and the two finally have a blow-up. This kind of makes sense. They are on their own. They're on the run. They got literally nothing to go on. But the Horcrux is just making it worse and almost antagonistic, and is really affecting Ron's, mental state. And this almost destroys the friendship, especially when Ron says immediately, how he doesn't know, especially when Harry says, you don't think I feel the same way you do? No, your parents are dead. You have no family. That was a line that you would never cross, because Harry deeply cares about the Weasleys. He views them as family, surrogate family, than he ever could. Eventually, this causes Ron to leave. Even though he says Hermione to come with him, Hermione decides, stays, but she is breaking down, basically begging Ron to stay. She waits outside waiting for Ron to come back, but he doesn't. Ron has pretty much left the gang, and, we get this scene that I really wish was cut out, and that is, Hermione heartbroken, and Harry trying to cheer him up. I think this is where the shipping between Harry and Hermione come from. I understand the comfort, but it also comes across as, well, like there might be something between them. Honestly, I've said this time and time and time again. I am not a shipper, nor a fan of Hermione and Harry. The two just don't work as a couple in my mind. I think it only works in the film because of the fact the actors are good looking, and that's a kind of very that's not a very good argument. Honestly, I just feel that the two just have no romantic chemistry. They're just friends. Nothing more. I wish the scene would have been cut out because it just doesn't work. It gives me the wrong message every time. I really wish this could have been kept out of the film. But it is there And I can appreciate it a little bit for, you know, with Harry trying to cheer Hermione up with Ron leaving, but also it just doesn't work for me. Throughout the film, we see how they are basically, further on the run. Eventually, Harry wants to go to Godric Hollow, the place where his parents died, and feeling they can find more information there. Here, they enter Godric Hollow, and they stand outside the house where Harry's parents died. It is a truly interesting scene, and it's bringing a lot of unpleasant memories for Harry, because this is where, his story began here. The death of his parents marked his arc, marked his story. Eventually, they make their way there, where they meet into this old lady, who is that historian that woman mentioned at the wedding, I think it is. But they notice something's odd. They are introduced to she tells a little bit about Grindelwald, and just as they're getting further into the place, they notice something odd with her. Eventually, she turns into Nagini and starts attacking the two. The two just barely manage to get out. Eventually, they find themselves in the forest. They do further research on Grindelwald. Well, correction, Hermione does. But it's also revealed that Harry's wand is now broken, and he's pretty much got no little wand. Just as he's, wandering in the forest, snow forest, I should say, he notices a Patronus that took the form of, I think, a dove or a deer. Just as they notice that, he follows it to the lake, where he, basically goes underneath to get Gryffindor's sword. However, he's wearing the locket, the Horcrux locket. And just as he gets further to the sword, the locket almost begins to go antagonistic against Harry and almost tries, to kill him. But he is saved at the last minute by a mysterious figure. As soon as he gets up, he thinks it's Hermione, but by the time he puts his glasses on, it's revealed to be Ron. Ron has finally managed to make his way back to the gang. And the two patch things up. Just as they are prepared to take down the locket, Ron says Harry should do it, as, because it affects him too much, he may not be able to go through with it. But Harry says, because it affects you the most, that's why. It basically is trying to, have Ron get over this milestone. And just as Harry activates the locket by, by speaking Parselmouth, and Ron with the Gryffindor sword about to go and attack it, it ends up, getting in Ron's head, trying to prevent it from getting destroyed by playing on his weaknesses, him being afraid of spiders, him being the least loved son, hell, his younger sister is more loved than he is, and how the woman that he loves prefers his best friend. It's getting in his head. And there's the scene of, showing, Hermione and Harry as a thing, again, taunting Ron, and even them making out. It's getting, just as with Harry still shouting, it's not real, take it down. Somewhere, somehow, Ron gets the courage to stand up and destroy the locket, destroying yet another Horcrux. This is what I love about Ron's character. He is mostly flawed, but he is loyal, he can be impulsive, he's definitely insecure, but when the chips are down, he is going to be one of the first many people to back Harry up, and not at all regret it. And he destroys the locket, essentially taking down, Voldemort. However, they are still unaware of how many more Horcruxes are out there. We get a nice little scene of Ron reuniting with Hermione. It's a fun scene because the first thing she does when he sees him is attacks him. And basically, attacks him, and yells at him, you name it. But, however, he said how basically he destroyed the Horcrux. And she's also disgusted on where she got the sword. Well, where he got the sword. He reveals to her that, honestly, how he got here was courtesy of the Deluminator. Remember what the thing said when, may show him the light, follow the way? After he left, he actually wanted to go back, but he couldn't. They had already left. It took a while for the, Horcrux to stop affecting Ron. With that gone, he was kind of on the run, trying to get at least tips of where they were. Eventually, after he turned the Illuminator on one day, he eventually, he heard someone call his name, and it was Hermione. Well, but not actually Hermione. And somehow, the Deluminator managed to lead its way back to the gang, where he found Harry and Ron. Now, I like there's a question here that's already popped up, and something I realized. The Patronus. Ron didn't cast it. Who did? Well, we will find the answer to that later in the next film. Anyway, with the gang reuniting and, needing to find further clues to find more Horcruxes, but also, Ron, gives Harry a wand, as he ran into a few snatchers. He managed to make his escape, and actually stole some of their wands. Eventually, after that little incident, they eventually find their way to the Lovegood's place, where they run into, Mr. Lovegood, Luna's father. Whilst they're there, they, there to find more further mystery, to the Horcrux thing, and especially Grindelwald. They find out Grindelwald kind of had an obsession with, well, known as the Three Deathly Hallows, and this is and the legend is a tie to the three brothers. They are very much unfamiliar. Well, Harry's unfamiliar with it. Ron knows about it, and Hermione, tells the legendary story. It turns out there were three brothers, all wizards. One day they came across a lake, and the lake was famous for most people would die. However, the three managed to get over it. And they were greeted by Death. Death was angry that, that he'd been cheated, because normally people fail to cross the lake. As they do so, but however, Death was cunning. He offered the three of them a prize. The older brother demands the most powerful wand. The second asks for something to help contact the dead to be with them. And the third asks to leave this place and never be caught. So he's given an invisibility cloak. The three then wander off on their very own. The first one is the first to die, as he uses the wand, which is the Elder Wand, to show his invincibility and brag. However, he is later killed in his sleep as someone takes the wand. This wand is revealed to have been passed down to generations down the line, and many people have ended up in the possession of the Elder Wand. The second brother, well, he uses the stone to contact the dead, mostly his late wife. However, he knows that she is not a part of this world. She's practically a ghost. And his more than sadness turns to madness, especially since she is, she doesn't love, being part of the real world, so he kills himself to be reunited with her. So Death has claimed a second victim. However, he spent decades trying to find the third brother, but couldn't find him. Eventually, one day, when the third brother, who was well old enough, eventually gives his invisibility cloak and hands it over to his son, and Death comes, and the two greet ways as equals. He greets Death like an old friend. He accepts his fate, and I think Death might have got a little respect, might have respected the third brother, because not only did he really out-cheat him, but when, Death came to him, he didn't fight back. He accepted Death, and the two departed. And those are the Three Deadly Hallows. And we find this, and we find what it is, because Luna has this, well, not Luna, Mr. Lovegood has this, the symbol on his, necklace with the symbol. However, they notice something very odd going on. Now, before we go forward, I just love how, as they're explaining the story, this animation they're using is truly great, and Emma Watson narrating the story is truly powerful, and it's one of my favorite moments. However, they notice something bizarre is going on around here. So what did they do with Mr. Lovegood? And it's revealed that Luna's actually been kidnapped. And Mr. Lovegood is trying to bring these three into a trap in order to get Luna back. As a result, the Death Eaters come and attack the place, resulting in them, trying to run and hide, but also trying to make it look, also make sure the Death Eaters see them, so that way they know he didn't lie, so nothing bad would happen to Luna. Eventually, they disappear far away. Now, just as that happens, Ron is angry how he was sold out, but Harry said he was desperate. What would we have done in that situation? I like how Harry's showing sympathy, as he knows that, he's in a very tough position right now. Eventually, as they end up further away, Harry ends up getting, I think it's either another vision or something. No, wait, he doesn't get a vision, sorry. That happens a little bit later. But as soon as they get further, they notice they are sought by a bunch of, snatchers, specifically their leader, and Greyback. The trio makes a run for it, while the snatchers end up chasing them. Eventually, they try to get further away, but they end up getting taken down one by one. Eventually, Hermione ends up putting a jinx on Harry's face to make him look barely unrecognizable. Just as, the three, are taken down and taken away, the leader of the Snatchers noticed something odd about the trio, and essentially, they take him to Malfoy Manor. Whilst this is happening, Harry's getting a vision as he's seeing into Voldemort's head, and Voldemort has broken into a prison, not Azkaban, but a special prison, and in there is a man by the name of, Godric Grindelwald, a prisoner there. It turns out after because he was the right possessor of the Elder Wand, but he was defeated by a witch and wizard, and has been locked up here ever since. The person that took his wand was Dumbledore. He reveals it to Voldemort and runs away. Now, there's something I need to talk about this scene. Now, in the book, when Voldemort goes to Grindelwald, Grindelwald refuses to give up the wand's location as respect to his friend as Dumbledore, because it turns out the two were long best friends, but then had a falling out. Something we will explain probably further in the Fantastic Beasts films. But with that, because of that, Voldemort kills Grindelwald. But here it's done differently. I don't know, I would have preferred what happened in the book than the film, but for me it doesn't fully break it for me. But it does leave Harry scared of knowing that, Voldemort now knows where the wand is. He's after the wand. Again, Voldemort's trying to get a more powerful wand to take down Harry, and he's trying to get his hands on the Elder Wand. Again, just as they are taken down, they then realize something odd about the trio, so they take him to Malfoy Manor, where they are presented in front of Draco, who knows the trio. But Draco is hesitant, knowing that, hesitant, with his father putting a lot of pressure on him to really identify and make sure it really is him, so they could be back in Voldemort's good graces. But Draco is very hesitant, saying he can't be sure, but he does say there's something odd about him, like the way his appearance is. Something's off here. Eventually, Bellatrix is here, and, asks to take Hermione's wand to try to dispel what happened. And just as she's walking away, she notices one of the Snatchers holding the sword of Godric Gryffindor's sword, and she begins to freak out and lashes out of the room. Harry and Ron are taken to the dungeon, and she begins to interrogate Hermione, or should I say, better yet, torture Hermione. Whilst they're locked in the dungeon, Ron is constantly hearing how Hermione is being tortured and is breaking, and going mad. Eventually, Wormtail comes back down, when his wand at one point, basically asked the goblin, Griphook, to come up, its stairs, clearly to interrogate. Whilst Harry and that are down there in the dungeon, they notice that there's some familiar faces down here, such as Luna Lovegood, Ollivander, and if I recall correctly, I think Dean Thomas is also down here. Or maybe that might have been in the book. But anyway, Harry then quickly gets out the glass that he's been carrying around in his sock, which Luna says that's a weird thing to keep in your sock, basically to ask for help. And next thing you know, Dobby appears and takes Ollivander and Luna Lovegood and the rest to a safe place. Ron suggests to a nearby cottage, which just so happens where Bill and Fleur Delacour are actually there. As a result, the characters are then taken to a special location and basically, Dobby said he'd be right back. The two then hide near, the gate as Wormtail comes back to open the gate, and, Dobby ends up knocking him out. Now, in the book, Wormtail dies a very violent and very grisly death, but it's changed for the film where he's more knocked out. I don't think he ever died in the film series, but it is what it is. As the two make their way up, Bellatrix, begins, to talk, to interrogate Griphook. But, they notice that the word Mudblood is written to Hermione's hand, and Ron is beginning to lose it, is beginning to, to get more unsettled. Bellatrix is getting more violent, more crazy, and basically goes to work on the Mudblood, she called Mudblood again. And, Harry and, Ron bursts like hell, and Harry follows almost reluctantly, and they get into a wand fight. Lucius is knocked out pretty easily, and it's a duel between Narcissa and Draco. But however, they are forced to stop when Bellatrix hold Hermione at one point, and she basically tells Lucius to summon Lord Voldemort. Just as that's happening, they notice Dobby on the top of the lamp, the chandelier, and basically unscrews it. And, everyone runs for it. Harry goes to Draco, overpowers him, and takes all the wands away, and knocking out Lucius yet again. There's this little standoff between Dobby and Bellatrix, and Dobby ends up, disapparating everyone. The trio, Griphook, and himself to a location where Bellatrix throws his knife, but the knife ends up taken there with them. They all end up on a beach, and seeing everyone's okay, but they notice that, Dobby is injured and is slowly dying. Harry runs to Dobby and, cradles Dobby as he begins to die. It is a truly sad scene, and I will admit, when I saw this for the first time, I was upset. This is such one of the most innocent characters in the series, and the way he dies, but he dies a free elf. Harry then says, basically, to look at everyone and says, we're going to bury him, but not with magic. We're going to do it with our own hands, to honestly say goodbye to Dobby. Now, as much as I agree, this is a really sad scene. I'm sure kids who watched the scene would have been sad. I've got a problem here, and my problem stems with we don't really see that much of Dobby. If you think about it, Dobby only makes an appearance, he only made an appearance in 2 films. If he made more appearances, the death would have been far more upsetting. It was I'll be honest, I am upset, but I'm not on the same level of down tears like I was with Black or Dumbledore, because these were characters I grew to like and made more than 2 appearances. But despite that, it is still a sad scene, and I like how the most innocent character is dead in their arms, and the nice little, graveside for Dobby is really sad and heartbreaking. We then end this film on a very dark note as Voldemort finds, Dumbledore's graveside. He goes through, looks at the corpse, and then takes the Elder Wand, Dumbledore's wand, and raises it and casts a powerful spell. We are now... And this is where we end the film. This is the setup for part 2. It is a really dark way, but it also left me a little bit unsatisfied. And I'll explain a little bit further in my proper review, but the plot's over now. But this is where we end the film. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. I feel the same way about this film like I do kind of with Half-Blood Prince. Again, when it comes to this and its predecessor, I'm always on the uneven balance of how I personally feel about the film. I do appreciate how this film is further setting up, the climax, but it also shows how it's further setting up how much of our heroes are really on the run. Voldemort has really taken over, and there's very little hope left. I do appreciate that, and we do get some high stakes, as some of our favorite characters get killed. Mad-Eye, Hedwig, and of course, Dobby. And of course, I do appreciate the beginning of the film does take us back to where we began to ultimately where we're going to end the series. Where we began with that sort of, this is really Harry's final adventure. And I do appreciate, and I will admit, the 2-parter format does work. But, again, I'm kind of not sure. But, if I'll be honest, with rewatching this film for the review, I actually would take this over Half-Blood Prince. For me, Half-Blood Prince is probably, I consider, the weakest one. Mostly because the comedy... it's just too much and dominates too much of the story in that one when it really should be the dark one. This is more of them on the run. They're fugitives. They're on the run trying to, take down Voldemort. And basically they're trying to take down Horcruxes. Not much of a plot really wise and very little action. Well, I shouldn't say that, but, it's like the action here does feel either high stakes because they are on the run. I get confused sometimes because it's both not enough action, but there is plenty of action. Honestly, this film does give some really great moments. As again, memorable character deaths, I do appreciate that. The Ginny and Harry relationship feel less forced and awkward, surprisingly, as I do really like that scene. And, it's just... this film really is meant to be a setup. This is a bridge film to get to the final chapter, and I appreciate it. The stakes have never been higher, and I do appreciate it setting up for that. Again, I will take this over Half-Blood Prince, but it would still be at the bottom of my ranking list of all Harry Potter films. But it is a film definitely worth watching to set up for the final climax, and I can't wait to review that when I get around to it. Honestly, I really like it. again, I'll take it over Half-Blood Prince. The actions, you know, is both, there's plenty, but I really wish there was more. And I really appreciate how, you know, how these guys are on their last leg. They are alone, they've got limited allies, and they're on the run. I do appreciate, you know, they're really relying on their wits and everything they've known from their Hogwarts years to really survive. I really felt that was done pretty well. Also, I just want to point out, really one of the most memorable parts of the film that always sticks out is how the Malfoy family are. Other than Bellatrix, you know, who's pretty much off a rocker and enjoying in the chaos, the three just don't want to be a part of it and are following through fear, intimidation, and really they are, especially Lucius and Draco, are no longer the confident guys they used to be. I appreciate that. Overall, Deathly Hallows Part 1, I will take over Half-Blood Prince. I consider this to be a little bit better, but it's still going to be at the bottom of my rankings. And there we have it. That was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. That is my personal thoughts on the film. But when this film came out, it was once again another big hit at the box office. I believe it was made on a budget of 250 million, but it was also shared with Part 2 because Part 1 and 2 were kind of filmed at the same time, but they just divided it. But it made over 977.1 million worldwide. Anyway, with this film being another hit, it was then followed by, of course, Deathly Hallows Part 2, the final installment, and we're nearly there. We just got to review this one, and then we've completed our Harry Potter films. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Steven Hour, and so long for now.